Okay, so I'm a photographer. First of all, thank you all for having me here. I'm a photographer and I like to do extended projects. One project that I did I call Shadowlands, which is a book project. And I'm going to read an introduction, an artist statement that was published last year when I had a show at the Delaware Valley Arts Association, which is a very short explanation of what the book is about. And then I'm going to read something else that I also wrote. The original idea behind the Shadowlands book project was to seek out places in the wilderness that would make appropriate settings for fairy tales and myths and capture them using traditional photographic techniques. I took inspiration from childhood memories of the landscapes described in C.S. Lewis's Narnia Chronicles, which I read during my summers on a tiny island in northern Canada. The project grew over time to become a space where mythical beings came to reside. The project is quasi-chronological and describes the natural history of another Earth-like planet, from its creation to its populating of gods and mythological beings, to the evolution of more complex and vegetable landscapes. Beings that populate these images are apparent because of our innate sense of pareidolia, which is the ability for us to see forms and patterns of nature. Now I'm going to read a slightly longer version of that. I spent the summers of my youth with my family on a tiny island on the edge of a Great Lake in Canada. The island had no electricity back then, and we entertained ourselves with physical activities, singing songs together, board games, and reading our selected summer books. Reading was done often by candlelight or gas lantern. We had no radio or TV, so we never knew what the weather might do, and it was common for 3-day storms. On those chilly days, we drank lots of tea, ate crumpets with marmalade, and read books. The 30,000 Islands archipelago of the Georgian Bay and Lake Huron is a wild place shaped by wind and water and ice, a magical kind of landscape with lots of storm-weathered trees, pink granite bedrock, and clean, clear water. Plenty of places to explore, play, and hide and seek. The little island we called our summer home is called Archona. It was there over a summer or two that we all read the Narnia Chronicles by C.S. Lewis. Reading those magical children's tales in such a magical place had a deep effect on my boyhood brain, and in a way, our little island had a similar feel to that of Narnia. Narnia is an other world, not too dissimilar from ours, but existing in a different space-time. In the stories, one could visit Narnia for several years or more and return to our Earth as if no time had passed at all. Time spent reading those books indeed takes one away to spectacular lands. But when put down still, you have, but when put down, you still have time to get ready for dinner. Because I had such a keenly developed sense of what Narnia looked and felt like, I decided to go out into the world and look for it with my camera. Places that had a magical feel to them, or that looked like a proper meeting place in the forest for trolls or fawns and talking animals. As the project continued, I began to see shapes of animals and mythical beings show up in the patterns of the rocks and the waters and trees. This common ability many of us have is called pareidolia, and may date back to when we lived in the forest and had to notice threats or food hiding in the details of the landscape. Shadowlands is my effort to create a parallel world which hides in the shadows of our own world, ordered in chapters which act as a timeline for both the birth and evolution and gradual population of deities, mythical beasts, and animals. So pareidolia is, it's like when you see Jesus and a piece of toast, or the man on the moon, something like that. It's like we all have this ability to see shapes, interpret shapes And, you know,
The Shroud of Turin.
Shroud of Turin is another example. So
the so-called man on the moon.
exactly. So my first notion was just to go out and look for Narnia and photograph it when I saw it, or found a place that reminded me of it. Then as the project grew, I reread the Narnia Chronicles, and then I also came across this book called The Discarded Image. C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Narnia Chronicles, was a professor of medieval literature at Cambridge. He was a Christian apologist, and had a radio show in World War II in England. He wrote lots of books, but this was his last book, The Discarded Image, which describes the medieval mindset for the construct of the heavens, and like including things like seven heavens, like and the different deities and angels that lived in the different heavens. So
Do you, can I continue the service and you'll start your talk in a little while?
sure. Am I going too long?
No. You're good. You're good. We just have a little ritual.
Okay. Oh, I just want me to do the introduction. I'm sorry. Let's go right into it.
Your opening words are going into your talk. Yes, Steve, please, like the chalice. Within each of our hearts, there is a most glorious light. Go forth and let its spark help you understand what troubles both you and others. Go forth and let its light of reason be a guide in your decisions. Go forth and bring its ray of hope to those in need of help in both body and spirit, that they may find healing. Go forth and fan the flames of passion to help heal our world. Go forth and spread the warm glow of love, pushing back the darkness of the world. Go forth and share your glorious light with the world. Now it's time for candles of joy and concern. If you have one, please come up. This is for my uncle, Edward George Bringberg, who died on Monday, a few days short of his 100th birthday. He was the last remaining person of his generation in my family. So he is much missed. Anyone else? Anyone online?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay. Steve will light it for you.
I have one here. It's okay. This person deserves 2 candles. This is a very dear friend of mine. I got the news around 12 weeks ago. I think I may have mentioned it. Very dear friend from when I was in my 20s, and we all were young actors and performers in New York City. We have remained best friends for a very long time. He had a stroke. I lit a candle every single day while he was hopefully going to recover. And his wife, Chris, called to tell me that they put him in palliative care, and we have just received the news that he has gone. And he was one of the good ones. He was one of the great ones. And he will really be missed. To think that I'm here on earth without him is a sad day for me. This is to Neil Napolitan. Wonderful, wonderful person.
This is concerning the events that happened last night between the Israel and Iran. We just sincerely hope that cooler heads prevail.
This is for all the unspoken joys and concerns. Steve, again.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute.
Our speaker today is Geoff Hutchinson. He was born in Newcastle, England in 1962 to American parents. He moved to the US at a young age and grew up in suburban New Jersey. Geoff studied fine art photography at the School of Visual Arts, where he received his bachelor's degree. His career has primarily focused on fine art printing for photojournalists, music, and fashion photographers. He has exhibited his work nationally and internationally and operates a boutique fine art printing lab called Print Space. He also collaborates with artists, providing high quality reproductions and art book services. Geoff,
Thank you, Heidi.
louder.
Thank you, Heidi. Okay, so I did get into my talk a little bit before. I want to now just show the images of this book that I've made, Shadowlands. It's a photographic book in 5 chapters, and the first chapter is called New World. It's about the birth of a new planet, an Earth-like planet. And can I share this?
Sure.
So I've never done this before. So share screen. There we go. Okay, great.
Oh,
Okay, make it a little brighter. Okay, this is the first image in the book. It's called Silver Morning, and the reason this is the first image is because the composition sort of creates an invitation to go into the valley. So you go into the valley, you go into the book. And the first chapter, New World, is really about the creation of a new planet. So it's very geological. This is a formation called Three Sisters in Iceland. A lot of these images are from Iceland.
let me take care of the legs first, so that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Is that better? Okay,
Better.
Yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, you know. Geoff, can you keep the mic right in front of your mouth?
Yes.
It may have to be.
Okay. And a lot of these landscapes refer to specificities in the Narnia Chronicles. There is a book called The Dom Treader, which is the 3rd book in the series, which is a sea voyage. And that when they come to the end of the world, at the end of the book, there are islands that float off into the sky. So that's the concept behind this image. These are basalt columns. That's when lava cools very quickly, as it pours into ice or into water, it will form hexagonal crystals, which, because of the force of the lava, will often continue to twist and make these amazing forms. This is called Skin of the Earth because the famous watercolor artist Wyeth said once that he preferred to paint winter scenes because with all the leaves gone, you could see the skin of the earth. This is mist coming off a glacier in Iceland. Also mist coming off another glacier in Iceland. And this was originally called Gateway to Valhalla. So in the Narnia Chronicles, C.S. Lewis makes a lot of references to Norse mythology and Old English mythology as well. This is actually a cut through. That wave came from outside and goes through this little channel here. This formation is interesting because this happened in a place called Mývatn in Iceland. This is lava flow that was encroaching upon the very small town of Mývatn. And the entire congregation got into the church and prayed that the lava flow would not overtake the village. And it actually stopped about 20 yards before the church. So here's a cross, of course. And this is a lava tube cave. It's about maybe a quarter of a mile to get to this point walking through the cave. Okay. The second chapter is called the Pantheon. And here we have a Cyclops. And also a little gremlin over here who's laughing at the Cyclops. There are a lot of battle scenes in the Narnia Chronicles, so this represents the soldiers falling in battle. And this is the shape of a woman, a reclining woman. Here are her legs, her torso. This is called Kiss. When I took this photograph, I saw a male face here on the left, with his eyes here, his nose, his lips. And then when I was developing the print in the developing tray, I saw another face, a female face here with her big nose. Here's her eyelashes,
Yeah.
and then her lips, and then here's her hair. So it's a kiss. It's also yin and yang. Thought this looked like an underwater castle. Of course, there's pyramid and an obelisk. You probably see the skulls here. In the fourth book, fourth Narnia book, The Silver Chair, there's a scene where the children are walking through a valley and they look up at the top of the cliffs on either side, and then one of them moves a little bit, and then they realize that the cliffs are actually sleeping giants, and these are their heads. And this is Mercury with his wings on his ears. There's his forehead and his nose and lips. See, this has a face here. Okay. And this is a troll. That's in New Jersey, actually. And I saw this as like a court jester or like a fool, court fool. The next chapter is the bestiary, and it's for more animal shapes. So, thought this looked like a baby pterodactyl, and this scene in the background is actually called the Valley of Thor in Iceland. And this is a griffin with dragon's wings, lion's body, and a lizard's head, I guess. Here's another lizard, like an iguana. Oops. Here's a Pegasus. This was actually on the edge of Lake Huron, cliff, and it was at the edge of the water, and the ice from the wind would separate from the cliff, and water would lap up against the rocks, and then the downward force of the wind created these upside down icicles. This is in Santorini, and this is actually a locally known phenomenon called dragon's perch. But I also saw a profile of a person here. And here's a phoenix. Again, these are the basalt columns. And there's Aslan. And here's a sea monster, or like a brontosaurus. Here's the elephant's eye and the trunk. It's not Santorini. And this is one of the first images I took in the whole series. And I saw this rabbit here hiding. There's its eye, 2 ears, mouth. This is the first experience I had with the pareidolia. Now we're through with the animal and God shapes. We're into a more evolved landscape, which I call Middle Earth. This is in Washington State. This is Dettifoss, which is Europe's largest waterfall. It's in Iceland. It's actually meltwater from the largest glacier outside of the polar glaciers. Across here. The fifth book in the Narnia Chronicles is called The Magician's Nephew, and in that the the main character, falls into um, a hole, and it comes up in an area that's full of circular pools, and he jumps into different circular pools, and each one has a different world inside. This is the end of Shadowlands. This is the last chapter. This was another early image. This is where I thought looked like an appropriate place for fawns and trolls to have a meeting. This is an ancient olive grove in Delphi, Greece. Yep, and that's the last image. So, um, I have some books here that I've made. Yeah. Um, yeah, this body of work is a book, and I've made books with a company called Blurb, which is something everybody can do online. But I've also made handmade books as well. That's about it. Anybody have any questions?
Why do you take pictures?
Might as well create.
Well, when I was started, because when I was a kid, I wanted to be a scientist, and I wanted to be a geologist, so I got very interested in Iceland, especially when I was a little kid. Then I had a problem with math, and I had an eighth grade math teacher who told me that I would not become a scientist because I had a problem with math. So I gave up on that, and my other interest was in art, but I didn't feel I had the patience for that until when I was 15, I took a class in high school in photography, and I realized it was a, sort of a mix of science and art. So, I could do experiments, and there's also, a different kind of dedication that you put into the process, but also the joy of taking the picture and seeing the film, and when you've processed it, and then making your contact sheets and then making your prints. There's sort of many stages of satisfaction in that. And then, making the prints, editing the prints, putting together a body of work. There's so many stages to it. It's a nice process. It's also an excuse to do something, like to go somewhere, to meet somebody, to explore an idea, a visual idea, play with, compositional concepts and light. And I used to love to do night photography with long exposures, just to see what would happen. It's just, there's a surprise element that's interesting. Plus, when you're taking pictures, you're at a different kind of awareness. You could say you're living in the moment. You're not thinking about anything else. You just, especially once you get proficient at it, so that you don't have to think about what to do with your camera. You can just do it automatically. You don't have to worry about exposures and things like that. You just know that stuff intuitively, and you get into a flow.
How often have you been to Iceland?
I've been to Iceland maybe 10 times.
Why Iceland?
Well, in 1972, there was an eruption, and a new island was formed called Surtsey, and they wrote up about it in National Geographic, and I was fascinated by that concept of a new place being born just out of the sea. And so I promised myself when I was 10 years old that I was going to go to Iceland one day. Kind of forgot about that, but I married a Swedish woman in 1990, and on our first flight over to Sweden, we flew over Iceland, and I saw the glaciers and the volcanoes, and it just blew me away. And I said, next time we go to Sweden, I'm going to take 4 or 5 days there and by myself with the camera. And I did, and the images I came back with were just amazing. And just so that's what started the whole project. Kind of, actually, the Shadowlands project started first in Greece, and that's where I met my Swedish ex-wife. But the thing about Iceland is there's so many incredible forms of, there's so many different kinds of lava and different kinds of formations. It's it's magical. Yes.
Can I just like, so I'm curious about the teacher that told you that you wouldn't be a scientist. Are you happy with the advice that teacher gave you, or do you think you would have grown into being a scientist regardless of what your talents were as far as mathematics? Because I was a teacher and I would never tell a child that. I wouldn't say that to a student, because you don't know what's inside of people.
Now, in fact, thanks for asking, because I was able to speak at my high school photography teacher's retirement party in front of a lot of other teachers. Those are high school teachers. The teacher that I had in 8th grade he was actually retiring that year. And what happened was, this was Algebra 1, and I was sick for 2.5 weeks in October and never caught up. There was no tutor to help me catch up. So, and plus I have a bit of ADD. So, no, that kind of crushed me. I got lost. I didn't know what I was going to do, because that's what I'd wanted to do since I was 7.
Mm.
And then thank goodness for my high school teacher, my photography teacher. Second or third week of photography class, he said, if there's anybody here who thinks they might want to pursue this, further, maybe go to college for it, talk to me after class. And I did. And then I was there after school. I was there during, study hall. The gym teacher would let me go in there. I was just in the darkroom all the time. And he got me a partial scholarship to the School of Visual Arts. Whereas the year before that, my grade point average really slipped after that, after that event with the math teacher. Mm.
I just I just wanted to say that I'm expecting that you think other people are going to see different things than you saw in the photography, because certainly when you were showing me things, I was seeing all kinds of other things. So I'm assuming that that's something that you would. And I just wanted to add one thing, that I'm very fascinated with Iceland also, mostly because I came upon some literature and I've read several books. And in some ways, that whole lifestyle, in the early days especially, is kind of otherworldly. People took on an amazing I don't know, amazing things just to be able to exist in that climate and everything. And I'm so fascinated by it. And I always said I was going to go. Of course, now I'm getting a little old and I probably won't make it. But I'm glad that you did, and I'm glad that you presented all the wonderful photos from there. I've also been to Greece. I have my best friend lives in Greece, and so I was lucky enough to get there and saw lots of wonderful things as well. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much. It's actually pretty easy to get to Iceland now. You can fly from Stewart Air Force Base, and it's only about a 5-hour flight.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
I don't go too far from home, but you never can tell what I may come up with when I reinvent myself again.
Another thing I like to tell people about Iceland is, if you're going to Europe, you can just do a 3-day stopover in Iceland and really get a good feel for what it has.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you.
Also, in Iceland, they believe that spirits inhabit the land. So before they build a new road, they can do a consultation and they find out, if it's a place where trolls live, and if it's determined that there are trolls there, then they make a diversion on the road.
So great. That's really great. I love that a lot. Yeah, that's great.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Thanks for your presentation today. What was it about, or what is it about the themes of pareidolia and of Narnia that attracted your interest to the point that you devoted a book to those two themes?
Well, when I was in college, I had a teacher who looked at some work that I shot of my other grandparents' home in Cape Cod. And I took the pictures after they had both passed away, knowing that the family wasn't going to keep the house forever. So out of nostalgia, I took photographs of all the bedrooms and around the house. And the teacher, without knowing that, said, well, you have a really good sense of place. I thought, oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that. So I decided to, go with that. And then when I got out of college and I needed to, find a project, that's when I came up with, well, since I read the Narnia Chronicles over and over again in Canada and in Cape Cod, I had a pretty good sense of what that place felt like. So yeah, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
What was it about Narnia
Oh.
and the act of seeing, or the phenomenon of seeing faces or shapes?
The pareidolia came upon. I didn't go looking for it. It just happened. That picture of the rabbit was the first time I saw an animal shape in nature. And what's interesting is, okay, so I had met my first wife in Greece and she had rabbits. And that picture was taken on her birthday, 2 weeks after I'd met her. So it was kind of, there's something charming about that.
Some synchronicity there too.
Oh, definitely synchronicity. There's so much synchronicity involved in these images. Some people have said, like, oh, what's the name of that formation? Like, there's no name for that formation. I just got lost and I came across this place. So a lot of these, a lot of times I just get a feeling. I'd stop the car and I'd go walk in a certain direction until I found something. Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
How lucky you were actually to be able to discover that, like that it took your mind, in one sense, the reading of Narnia and all that. I mean, it really is pretty amazing. And, you had some not great helpers, like along the way in terms of finding your path, but
Mhm.
how cool that you did. And interestingly enough, it's kind of like seeing things that are magical and mystical and you know present if you want to be looking for them.
One of the things I would always do on these trips is I would travel by myself and didn't have anybody to talk to, no distractions, no television, computer, or anything like that. So I wanted to get into more of a subconscious and not, be more available to that type of thing.
Great.
Thanks.
Jeff, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Thank you, everybody.
Steve? May the love that gives it life to beauty, the reverence that gives to life its sacredness, and the purpose that gives to life its deep significance be strong within each of us and lead us into ever deepening relationships with all of life. Thank you. We'll have a break for coffee and cake. Thank you.